let's jump into some early offensive coordinator candidates. Says it there down below. Early. It's early. A lot of things can shake up. A lot of these teams are going to go into the postseason, could make some deep postseason runs as well. Some could receive raises. Who knows? Who knows? Coaching changes, bigger opportunities, yada, yada, yada. But as of right now, November 12th, this is where we're at, and some names to just keep an eye on for the next couple of weeks. First off, we'll start off with the one that's really intriguing to us. We've discussed it on here plenty of times with this name, but Brendan Marion, UNLV's offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. Kade Bell, Pittsburgh's offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach there. Mike Shanahan, Indiana's OC and wide receivers coach. Indiana having a really good year over there in that wide receiver room too. Mike Bloomgreen, former Rice head coach, also has offensive coordinator and O-line experience. Joe Craddock, Tulane's offensive coordinator, really fun offense to watch there. Ben Arbuckle, Washington State's offensive coordinator. And then last one here on our list this evening is Matt Leftwich, Texas State's offensive coordinator. I say we go over to Marion, UNLV's offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. We actually got some time we actually got to watch a little bit of that game in Miami. Who were they? It was Boise State, right?
Yeah.
I think they're facing Boise State. So got to see that UNLV offense a little bit. The interesting thing here about this name is that he played under Mike Norvell at Tulsa and also worked as a quality control assistant for him at Arizona State in 2015. Interesting name to keep an eye on and just see if there's something here to work with for Mike.
Yeah, I think this could, potentially be target number one for Florida State when you consider the long-standing relationship between the two. We've seen Marion in the past, show his support for Mike Norvell on social media. And the thing about him is, I know he's the offensive coordinator and the quarterbacks coach at UNLV, but he was also the wide receivers coach at Pittsburgh a couple years back when they had a pretty potent passing attack. So he's got some experience at multiple positions. I mean, this is a young up-and-comer, a very hungry coach, and someone who, since he's already got that experience with Mike Norvell, I think the philosophy and, how those guys work together would probably be pretty seamless.
Yeah, it's an interesting offense. Obviously, you hear the phrase "go-go offense," but it's a really intriguing offense. That's what, 9th in college football, 7th in college football in points per game. But it's a run-heavy attack. I mean, they're averaging almost 250 rushing yards per game, and obviously Mike wants to be a running football team first. So it'd be an interesting option, but at the same time, you've got a lot of wide receivers in that wide receiver room that probably wouldn't be too happy running it 40 to 50 times per game. So there's going to be a fine balance there, but it would certainly be a fun name. You didn't even mention when he was at Texas, and I believe Xavier Worthy was there when he was a wide receiver coach there. So he's coached some talent for sure.
Jordan Addison too, as well, at Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 2 had experience coaching quarterbacks. Yeah, I mean, it's a good offense, and it just depends. He's going to be a hot name for a lot of people. So that's the thing about him. A lot of teams are going to be interested, but that connection with Mike Norvell and the ties there could be a game changer at the end of the day.
And I think before you move on, I think another thing that's really interesting about him is how they've adjusted a little bit, because obviously UNLV was in the news earlier this year where they had that situation with the quarterback and he wanted more NIL money. He's not playing anymore. They go with their backup quarterback. And I mean, UNLV has still been pretty potent on offense. I think that's impressive. And that quarterback, the one who's come in for the starter, outperforming the guy who started the season.
Yep, exactly. Kade Bell, Pittsburgh offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach, actually has some really good ties down in the South for recruiting. That's going to play a big factor here for Florida State, but has been a big key factor in the turnaround for Pittsburgh's offense there. I mean, they're having a great season up there. A season that didn't really expect that much, but yeah, definitely a big turnaround there. And he's been helping that, and is, I believe, about 2 years at Pittsburgh. Came from Western Carolina.
This is actually his first year at Pittsburgh, which I think is what makes it so impressive, because I think everyone's used to Pittsburgh not really having a top productive offense. You know, they had those years with Kenny Pickett a little bit ago, but other than that, I don't think a lot of people think of the Panthers as some explosive offensive threat. And then they bring in Cade Bell to run the offense in 2024. And I mean, Pittsburgh, they've been putting up a lot of points on the board, and their offense has looked better than it has in recent years. And this guy, another up and comer, only 31 years old. You know, this is his first offensive coordinator job at the FBS level. Like you said, came from Western Carolina. I think he worked at Valdosta State for a little bit. Gainesville native, so he is going to have some recruiting ties down here in the Sunshine State and around the Southeast. And, you know, a little bit young maybe, but someone who is already showing what he can do. And, you know, when you're looking for an up and comer, I mean, this is certainly a guy that you should have circled on your short list.
Yeah, and just to reaffirm the offensive stature, they're averaging almost 37 points per game, about 16th nationally in scoring. It's just something you don't really expect from Pitt, even without, you know, Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison, some of that crazy talent they had a few years ago. But he's got those boys hooping.
One thing to note, too, during his time at Western Carolina, he led the FCS in yards per game, 504.1 a game in 2023. He ranked fourth in scoring, 37.5 points per game in 2023. So, yeah, he could put an offense together and he could put some points on the board. You know, we don't have to go through every single name on here. Is there some that y'all would specifically want to go through here that stands out to you guys?
I would say Shanahan, and even though you didn't mention him, Dustin and I were talking about it earlier, I think you also have to mention Tino Sunseri, who's the other co-offensive coordinator at Indiana. Indiana is second in the country in points per game. Both of them have some interesting ties, with Sunseri being a quality control coach at Florida State under Jimbo. His dad was an assistant coach under Jimbo. So there's some ties with both of them. Obviously, Shanahan would be the bigger hire, in my opinion. He seems to be the one running the show there. But either one of those guys, I think you'd have to feel pretty good about.
Yeah, I really like Shanahan as well. You know, has made that leap from James Madison and continued to show some really impressive signs as an offensive coordinator. And like you said, Austin, Indiana, really explosive on offense this year. Not just a quarterback, but they've had some really good receivers as well. And he's the wide receivers coach too. So, I mean, that's one to watch. And, you know, just kind of going further down that list, another one that stood out to me, Ben Arbuckle at Washington State. In his second year, Washington State overperforming expectations in 2024. And I mean, have been pretty solid for the most part. And like I said, second year. So that means last year he was able to work with Cam Ward for a little bit before Ward ultimately hit the transfer portal and went to Miami. So he's had some experience working with one of the top quarterbacks in all of college football. So that kind of stands out to me a little bit.
I'd say would be good for a dual threat quarterback, something that I think Florida State might look into wanting to continue because of the success that you had previously there with Jordan Travis and what Mike Norvell was able to put together for him. But yeah, what John Mateer developed him into a really good dual threat quarterback, over 2,300 yards and passing, 600 rushing yards, and 33 total touchdowns under Arbuckle. And only, you know, he's 29 years old. And also to a Texas native there.
Very
as well.
young.
Yeah, extremely young, but it's intriguing there for me at that quarterback position and what Florida State wants to do moving forward offensively.
And this one, it may be a little bit off the wall, but you've got the FSU ties here, and I'm talking about Mike Bloomgren, who was fired by Rice a couple weeks ago. But, you know, you look back into his coaching career, and I mean, this is a guy who was the offensive coordinator and the offensive line coach at Stanford whenever Christian McCaffrey was starring for the Cardinal. Also has NFL experience, worked for the New York Jets. You know, he didn't coach at Florida State or anything, just graduated from the university, but, you know, obviously has a little bit of ties there, and he's open for another job after being let go by Rice. Be interesting to see if he's in the conversation or in the picture at all.
I don't know if I'd like him as an offensive coordinator, but if he wanted to be a strictly O-line coach, I'd be a fan of that.
Stanford had some good lines back in the day.
They did. They had a bunch of guys drafted from those middle 2010s.
Yeah, there's some big boys.